Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So I recently lost over 30 pounds or just over 13 kilograms, and I did this without doing any exercise or without being particularly hungry. So in this video, I thought I'd share exactly how I did it. By the way, if you're new here, my name's Josh. I'm an investment actuary turned YouTuber, and I currently work as an investment researcher, which means I love to better understand the systems we live in and also find systems to implement for progression. So how did I lose all that weight? Well, this is my 3-step plan. So step 1 was to cut out carbs and ultra-processed food from my diet, except on one day, which was my treat day. Step 2 was to manage that treat day, so make sure that the treats weren't too extreme. And then step 3 was to add in fasts or fasting. So in what follows, I'm going to go through each of those steps in more detail. I previously ate whatever I wanted and then cycled for hours a day to burn it off essentially. But when my young baby was born, I realized that this just was not a sustainable option. I wasn't able to spend that much time exercising each day, so I had to find a different solution. So I first wanted to highlight my starting point, which was about a year and a half ago, and I weighed 232 pounds, and so probably around 100 kilos. And at that point, what I was doing was I was using my Garmin watch to track my calorie output for each day, which included hours of cycling. And then I would do calorie counting to make sure I was eating less than I burnt through cycling and other exercise. That was extremely time consuming. One, I had to do hours of exercise each day because I wanted to eat whatever I wanted. And then also I had to track and monitor my food, which involved using MyFitnessPal and making sure I just kept a food diary. I even calorie counted beer, for example. To be honest, it worked. But then when my baby was born, I realized that I couldn't spend that much time exercising each day, and calorie counting was just becoming a real drag. So I was looking for an alternative. Also, because I was eating whatever I wanted, maintaining a caloric deficit was really difficult and required epic amounts of willpower, because I was always kind of looking for that just extra little hit, I guess. And also just doing that amount of exercise each day required epic amounts of willpower because it was hard. I would hurt, like I would be worn out. So I was looking for a solution that didn't rely on huge amounts of willpower and discipline. So when I was looking for alternatives, I stumbled across a book called Burn by Herman Ponzer, and that basically dispelled the exercise myth for me for good, because he says that your body essentially adapts over time to certain levels of energy output or exercise. So no matter how much exercise you do, your body eventually adapts your caloric balance to meet that. So there's no point in fighting that system. And then on the calorie counting side, I also read Michael Pollan's book, In Defense of Food, and one of the things he talks about a lot is reductionism in food. So reducing something that's highly complex, like an item of food, to something as simple as a calorie or even macronutrients, because that just essentially misses so much more of what the food's about. So it misses all the micronutrients, the toxins, the antitoxins, and also kind of the structure of the food. I think they call it the matrix structure. So much that doesn't get captured by the humble calorie. So that led me to step 1, which, as I said, was cut carbs, ultra-processed food, but keep in a treat day or a cheat day. Now, the theory goes that carbs and ultra-processed food cause you to overeat because of their addictive nature. Apparently, the way your hunger system works is you kind of have this kind of homeostatic system, which I mentioned with the Burn book, which just keeps your body in this natural state of equilibrium with the amount of energy coming in and the amount of energy going out. Your laws of thermodynamics, where energy is conserved and you can't break those laws that everyone talks about. But then you also have your dopamine system, which is also linked to food, and that's your kind of reward focus system, or the system that causes you to want more and more of a thing, or like the thrill of the pursuit, for example. So when you have these two systems interacting, if one of them breaks, so the dopamine orientated system, that could cause you to just crave more and more food. So the aim is to kind of silence that dopamine based system and focus more on the kind of appetite monitoring system. Another theory is from Gary Taubes's book, Why We Get Fat, and that's that ingesting carbs causes your body to release insulin, which then stores those carbohydrates as fat. So if you don't eat any carbs, that system is kind of not put into use, which means you store less fat. So based on this, I implemented the slow carb diet from Tim Ferriss's book. And this is a slow carb diet from the 4-Hour Body, which basically tells you to cut out all carbohydrates except kind of slow carbs, as he calls it, which are beans and legumes. So, all different types of beans are fine. And he also tells you to cut out sugary drinks, alcohol, fruit, except for one day a week where you can just go nuts. This was, I guess, a step that I needed to take. and it was kind of a like small step because you still get the carbs from the beans and legumes, but you cut out a lot of the things which I found really addictive, which were things like bread, for example. And also on the bread front, this book, Grain Brain by David Perlmutter, made me crave bread a lot less because he talks about the issues that grain, and in particular gluten, have with the body, and inflammation, which is something I want to keep down as well, which I'll talk about later. Cutting out white carbs in particular and sugar was just a great first step. By having beans and legumes in there, it makes it a bit less daunting. And the slow carb diet obviously has a cheat day, which makes it even easier to stick to, because you know that there's one day a week where you can just go absolutely mental and eat whatever you want. And I definitely made the most of this. You know, pizza, burgers, Ben & Jerry's. I went absolutely nuts. And still, with this treat day, I was able to manage my weight down from 232 pounds to 218 roughly. So that was without doing any exercise and still eating whatever I wanted once a week and going absolutely nuts on that day. I felt like that was a very sustainable diet that I could stick to. But then that led to a bit of a weight plateau, so then I sought to manage my cheat days, which was step number 2. So after some time of doing this slow carb diet with the cheat days, I realised that on my cheat day I felt absolutely terrible. I can obviously track my HRV, so stress levels on my watch, and that was going through the roof. I was irritable, I was bloated, I felt terrible. I didn't want to go see people on my treat day because I just felt like crap. So I decided that actually, eating all this food just wasn't worth it. So yeah, maybe it tastes good immediately, but I was feeling like terrible 5 minutes later. So I then sought to manage my treat days. Maybe another explanation for this was I just got used to eating clean and good food on the slow carb diet and just noticed more how the bad food made me feel. I read The Bulletproof Diet by David Asprey, and he talks a lot about how there are kind of natural and man-made toxins in food. So it's not just the ultra-processed stuff, but there are actually things in the natural world that can cause you to have bad reactions. I really resonated with that book actually, because he opens it with how he used to his body, depending on what he ate, used to change really dramatically. And he puts this down to inflammation, and that's just something I really resonated with. And it made me realise that actually I shouldn't feel bloated and inflamed regularly. That's not a good reaction, and you should find foods that don't make you feel like that. So that was really eye-opening for me. Learning more about that, I decided to manage my treat days and try and look for more kind of less UPF and less kind of toxin-based treats. And what I found then was my weight was a lot less volatile in those days, and I wouldn't just suddenly kind of, go up. So again, I was able to bring my weight down a bit more. So because I started to manage these cheat days, my weight was much less volatile, which meant that I was able to compound the kind of weight loss gains week on week. And that got me a little bit further towards my goal. I also started to cut beans from my diet as well within this stage, because I realized that they weren't actually necessary and I didn't need even those carbohydrates. So they were a wonderful kind of like stepping stone to manage my appetite post cutting out carbs and sugar, but I found that I just didn't need them over time. And that's exactly what it says in this book. It starts with food. Among other things, it just says that basically beans and legumes are a good source of carbs and fiber, but you don't really need that if you're not doing loads of exercise or if you're not having, energy output. So based on all these books, and I started to basically realize that all I really needed to eat was eggs, avocados and olives, and I could basically live off that and be pretty happy. However, my weight then stagnated, and I found it difficult again to lose that extra few pounds. So I then moved on to step 3, which is adding in fasting. So I added in fasting couple of months ago now, and that just really accelerated my weight loss. So fasting is like kind of a constant throughout all these books, and it is what I would say the thing that I found the most intimidating, because going for more than a day without food actually sounds really scary, and it's kind of a mental barrier you have to go through. But I've been doing the 16-8 for a long time. I was never hungry in the morning, so I just didn't eat. And then I just started to push that even further based on knowledge I got from this book, which is called Fast This Way by David Asprey, kind of the same guy that wrote the Bulletproof book. And he kind of gives you the confidence that you could push fasting out. So I started doing 24-hour fast, 48 hours, and then I'm currently settled on a 62-hour fast. So I stop eating on Sunday night and don't eat again until Wednesday morning breakfast. And I find that that is just the best way of getting your head in the game for the week ahead, and also just, focusing in on losing that weight and feeling great. I also find that when I'm fasted, I do have lots of energy and I am kind of mentally focused, and I think it's because I followed steps 1 to 2 and got fat adapted. Because I cut out all the carbohydrates, my body just got used to using kind of fats as an energy source, and yeah, it's just a great way to live. I just lost all of my kind of hunger pangs. I didn't get hunger attacks, which used to happen quite regularly, and I just had a much more constant source of energy. I found this great quote actually from Plato, obviously a famous philosopher, who said, "I fast for greater physical and mental efficiency." So yeah, he even knew back in ancient Greek times that there were some benefits to fasting. So since then, I've almost immediately dropped my weight from about 220 pounds to 200 pounds, and that was just amazing. Felt great in my clothes and everything, so that just gives you even greater impetus to carry on. So what does my diet look like now? Well, I've got a little card here, which is what I aim to stick to. So it's Monday fast, Tuesday fast, Wednesday's kind of like a refeed day, so eggs, avo, olive oil, ground beef, avo, olives, steak, veg. Then Thursday I do OMAD, so 1 meal a day, so just have dinner. That's a bit of a carb refeed day, so I tend to have dal or some bean-based meal. Then Friday have fish, and then Saturday try and do like a slow cooked meat, so get some really fatty meat and slow cook it and just enjoy that throughout the day. And then Sunday I still have a treat day, but that can be like whatever, you know, sometimes it's typically when I'm seeing friends or family, and I try to keep it low UPF, low carb, but if it's not, then whatever. And I know I've got those fasting days to get me back on track. So what is my philosophy kind of based on all this reading? Well, I think actually the book that kind of sums up my philosophy is the Paleo Manifesto. He talks obviously about how the human body evolved over millions and millions of years to eat certain diets, and actually the most recent time period, which we're calling post-agricultural, is actually fairly unique in humans' history, because we moved kind of hunter-gatherers to farming the land and eating things like grain, and even in more modern times, this kind of trend of ultra-processed. So the human body definitely didn't evolve for agricultural foods or even ultra-processed foods. So the aim is to get your diet as close to as possible the old hunter-gatherer diet, because that is what your body evolved for, so it's what will cause your body to thrive. Indeed, in the book he talks about hunter-gatherers' skulls being far more healthy and the teeth being far more aligned than post-agricultural skulls. So I feel like for our health, maybe the agricultural revolution and everything since might not have been great on the food side, but you know, open to debate. And then I guess the other element that I kind of believe in is that time is the best test for these things. So things we've been eating for millennia are probably safe, whereas things that have only been around for a couple of 100 years or even like a couple of decades are probably not time tested yet. So anything new, we should apply the precautionary principle and look for evidence of absence of harm rather than absence of evidence of harm. i.e. we should be looking for the fact that something doesn't harm us rather than looking for the fact that there's no evidence that it does harm us. So even if there are all these scientific studies saying that certain foods are fine, they're only as good as the studies, and so time will be the best test if those studies are good. Years ago we thought smoking was good for us, and there were lots of studies showing that smoking didn't harm us, so time will tell. The fasting also fits with this, and it's spoken about quite a bit in the Paleo Manifesto, because obviously in historical times we didn't live in this culture of abundance, we lived in the culture of scarcity, and that's what we were evolved in, that's what we're designed for. So we should try and implement that culture of scarcity more within our food environment. I guess step 1 kind of fits with it as well, because also when we were hunter-gatherers, when would we have had carbohydrates? Maybe when fruit ripened once a year in certain seasons, or when we stumbled upon a beehive full of honey, you know. It's quite interesting to think like this, in my personal opinion. So there we have it. That's my 3-step plan for diet and weight loss, and that's how I lost 30 pounds without being particularly hungry, without having cravings, and without doing any exercise. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to check out more from me here.